Hello, vinyl community. This will be an update on some LPs that have mysteriously appeared in my domicile over the last couple of weeks, and there are quite a lot of them, so we'll get right down to it. Starting with this issue on Sub Rosa of music of Pauline Oliveros. Now, I'm very proud to have been a student of Pauline Oliveros. I studied electronic music with her in the mid-70s at UC San Diego. So that was my first hands-on experience with synthesizers using the Buchla system. And so that was obviously a very formative experience for me. And as I said before, I'm very proud of that. And this album is her very primal form of electronic music. It's pretty minimalist in orientation, a lot of just pure sound, just exploring the pure nature of sonority. And this issue is on silver vinyl. So that's cool. Double LP on silver vinyl from Sub Rosa. And speaking of minimalism, there is this reissue of the classic LP on Columbia by Steve Reich. Live electric music featuring Violin Phase on one side and It's Gonna Rain on the other. And these are his experience in tape loops and phasing in and out. The Violin Phase has Paul Zukovsky playing live violin against the loops, and It's Gonna Rain, of course, is the famous piece that uses the preacher telling us that we're going to experience a biblical rain and then getting caught into the loop of it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain. And there was a piece in Rolling Stone in 1971 covering what they called classical music, and that included a review of this album that really intrigued me, and that piece in Rolling Stone just really brought a lot of things to my attention at a young age that I hadn't heard of before, this being one of them. So that was a pretty important and formative piece right there. Richard Teitelbaum with Anthony Braxton. Duets for synthesizer and saxophone or clarinet. Contrabass clarinet. He uses the big old paperclip instrument on here. The pieces are attributed solely to Richard Teitelbaum, even though it's there's obviously an awful lot of improvisation from both, but he is credited as the sole composer on this. Time Zones by Richard Teitelbaum and Anthony Braxton. From 1977, Serengeti Minstrel by Sonny Fortune. This is a great, funky Latin jazz album. Jack DeJohnette on drums, plus lots of percussion happening. Woody Shaw on trumpet, Kenny Barron on electric piano. Great stuff. And of course, Sonny Fortune on saxes and flutes. Cutout copy from 1978. Egberto Gismonti on ECM, Solgio Meogia, and that's Midday Sun. And he's joined on here by half of Oregon. He's got Colin Walcott and Ralph Towner. He's got Jan Garbarek on here, and of course he's got his old mate, the late Nana Vasconcelos. So this is some classic ECM world music. We've got photos of all those wonderful folks on the back. From 1979, Leroy Jenkins, Space Mines, New Worlds, Survival of America, with Andrew Cyril on percussion, Anthony Davis on piano, George Lewis on trombone and electronics, and again Richard Teitelbaum on synthesizer, playing modular Moog and micro Moog systems. This is divided into a play loud side and a play soft side, where the electronics are left off and it's just violin, drums, piano, and trombone. This is on the tomato label. And on the Japo label from Germany, ECM subsidiary, this is also from 1979, TOK, Paradox. And TOK is the initials of the performers' names. Takashi Kako on piano, Oliver Johnson on drums, and Kent Carter on bass. And this is pretty straight-ahead jazz in parts, but it gets a little bit classical and a little bit free at different times. So quite interesting stuff from Japo. Here's a more recent piece. This is originally from 2001 by Akira Sakata, Fisherman's.com. And he's joined on here by Pete Cozy on guitar, Bill Laswell on bass, and Hamid Drake on drums. So, you know, this is going to have a pretty funky orientation, and it does. Although Akira Sakata himself, he's known as a saxophone player, but he seems to do more vocalizing on this album than sax playing. The vocalizing is in Japanese, and it has a very wailing character. It's almost like Middle Eastern music. It's like the muezzin calling to prayer. Very primal sounding. Great cover. This is a new reissue of that 2001 release. And this is another new reissue on the Otoruko label of Evan Parker and Derek Bailey, The London Concert. Typically cool, free sound, completely freeform improvisation from these two British masters of that genre. And here is a recent reissue featuring the late Derek Bailey. This is quite what it says on the label, Playing with a Dead Person by John Tilbury and Derek Bailey. This is recordings by Derek Bailey with John Tilbury overdubbing piano. It works very well. You wouldn't know that it was not recorded live, that Tilbury's adding his piano after the fact. It just sounds like guitar and piano duets. It is, however, a very short album. There's not a lot here, and part of it is even taken up with spoken word. Side 2 has a bit of John Tilbury telling the story of how the album came to be, and side 1 opens with a joke from Derek Bailey. So there you go. Playing with a Dead Person. And going back to the 60s, Albert Ayler. This is his ESP disc classic Bells. Another short recording. Side 2 of this is under 8 minutes. Vibrations, and side 1 is the 1945 Bells. And this is the reissue on white vinyl. From Belgium, Placebo, jazz rock group. This was recorded in 1971. This is a reissue on the Music on Vinyl label. Placebo is a horn-based band, actually led by their keyboard player. The music is sonically a little bit like later Soft Machine. A lot of vamps, sort of laid back sounding with the electric piano, and then a long lead line on top with maybe soprano sax or soprano sax doubled by bass clarinet. But it's more mainstream than that. Some of the horn voicings, when they all get together, it's a bit Chicago-like. So this is not real proggy, but pretty interesting. And it also has an R&B element in that they cover some R&B classics. They open with a version of Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues, which also sneaks in a quote from What's Going On. And they do Sam and Dave, You Got Me Hummin' on here as well. And that is with vocals. Most of the album is instrumental except for those two covers. This is not the recent issue of John Cale and Terry Riley, Church of Anthrax. This is a Columbia version, but a later pressing. It has a white cardstock cover and this very late Columbia label. So far from the original pressing, but this is a bit of an unusual collaboration. It's a lot more rock than what you would normally get, obviously, from Terry Riley, and more instrumentally based than you would expect from a John Cale record. A couple of albums by the French avant-rock group La Société des Timides à la Parade d'Oiseaux, Society of the Timid Ones at the Bird Parade, if I've got that right. This is hard to describe. They're a bit like Gong without the spaciness, a bit like Pere Ubu. Great cover art on this one, which is Les Combats Occultés, The Hidden Combat, and this live album, Wir Schwitzen Blumen. And you notice that they've switched to German there. They do a multilingual approach on that. There's English, Italian, Spanish, French, all in one song. This was sent to me as a freebie. This is Volcano the Bear. The album is Planetary Bethlehem. This is electronics, a lot of looping going on, electronic sounds and electronically distorted acoustic sounds. No track titles, though if you look this up on Bandcamp, you'll see it's broken down into a lot of short tracks, but they're all just like Untitled Number 1, Untitled Number 2, and so on. But this is just solid, unbanded sides with no titles on the album. Very weird and wild. I'm a big fan of Ikue Mori, who went from being the drummer with the No Wave band from New York, DNA, to being a really highly experimental exponent of laptop electronica. And this is her collaboration with the pianist Christian Ron. So he's doing both electronics and piano. There's one long piece on here, Primordial Chaos, that's piano-based. Otherwise, this is all electronic and really great stuff. Very abstract, very out. And this was another freebie. This is Aiden Baker, Pure Drone. And again, this does what it says on the label, as they say. It's pure drone. Just like guitar noise that drones on and is very meditative and calm. Finally, a classical album on the Nonesuch label, Francis Poulenc. I've been a fan of his woodwind music, in particularly his sextet for wind, quintet, and piano. This is the piano and clarinet sonata, the oboe and piano sonata, and a piece titled Aubade for piano and 18 instruments, which is basically a small orchestra, and a piano concerto. Very jolly. In parts it sounds like it could be the music for an old Western. It doesn't sound American, but it just has that kind of old film music feel. I could imagine it being the soundtrack to a John Ford movie or something like that. So that's it, and I'm going to have to work on condensing this down to a reasonable length. So bye-bye for now, and talk to you again soon.